Hello, everyone. It's Jaime Jo with MadLit Musings again, and I'm here today to feature Jennifer Deibel, who writes Irish historical romance and just came out with The Maid of Ballymacool. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
I did.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about why you write Irish, because I know
Yes.
why, but readers should know why.
Yes. So one, Ireland is amazing. Everyone should go there if they have the chance to, and if not, they should go there through my books.
Yeah.
But my husband and I were blessed enough to spend about 6 years in Ireland. We lived up in County Donegal for 2 years when it was just my husband and I, and then we came back to the States for a while and then went back to the Galway area for about 4 years. So far, all of my stories have been set between Donegal and Galway. So there's that familiarity and kind of
Mhm.
authenticity from having spent so much time in that area. So it's fun to bring that to this side of the world so that people can experience it because a lot of people are never going to be able to get over that far. So,
Right,
um,
right.
yeah.
It's on my bucket list. I haven't been to Ireland. I've been to other places in Europe, but not Ireland. So I'm not Irish though either. So I gave precedence to Germany,
Yes.
which I know you've been to Germany too. So there's that.
Yes. Germany, Austria. Yes. We've
Yeah,
been lots of places.
I've been all over the place. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Maid of Ballymacool.
So this story was so much fun to write. It's kind of being touted as a sort of new spin on a Cinderella story retelling.
Ooh.
It's not really a strict retelling. It just kind of
Hmm.
has a Cinderella vibe because Brianna Kelly, our heroine, is the lowest scullery maid at Ballymacool boarding school
Okay.
and boarding house for girls. And she's been there her whole life, as long as she can remember. And for whatever reason, the headmistress treats her with great disdain and vitriol
Mm.
and is quite abusive to her, actually. And so she gets one afternoon a week where she can leave the school, like the immediate grounds, and
Okay.
go exploring the woods that surround the school. And so that's where she
Hmm.
kind of finds her solitude, and that's where she connects with God and with nature. And but through over the years, she's found all kinds of treasures that people have lost out in the woods. And so
Okay.
on one of her outings, she comes across this metal something. She can't, it's so badly damaged and rusted, she can't tell what it is. And before she can figure it out, then she kind of gets in trouble for some things and her time off is taken away. So she's
Oh,
stuck slaving away in this boarding school and with this sort of buried desire for more, to do more, be more, make a difference in the world with no possible way out to do that.
yeah.
Um, so in the middle of all this, Michael Ray shows up at the school. He's been sent to deal with his unruly cousin, who has been
Hmm.
sent from Dublin to Ballymacool because she has quite literally burned all the bridges her family has down in Dublin, and no one else in her family wants to deal with her. So Michael has been sent. And when he arrives, he finds that things at Ballymacool are not what the reputation says they are. And when he runs into Brianna, there's something about her that just draws him to her. And of course, he thinks she's beautiful, but it's more than that. She's almost familiar to him, but he has no
Mm.
idea why. And so he kind of takes it upon himself to sort of be her protector, and they work together to try and get to the bottom of this thing that she's found, and it
Okay.
turns out to hold kind of the key to a lot of different things. And so it explores themes of belonging and
Hmm.
family and faith in hard circumstances. And so um yeah, and they spend a lot of time together. There's a little bit of forced proximity that goes on, which
Oh,
fun
gosh
things
darn.
happen. So I
You might
know
have a
it's
little bit of
awful.
romance brewing, huh?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Oh, I love that though. And I love the concepts that you bring out in your books. And obviously here on my podcast, I love to talk about the books, but I love to talk about the spiritual elements too. And
Mm,
we were talking before we came on the air here, about identity and belonging. What made you go in that direction as far as exploring those themes and that element of who am I and what's my purpose?
mm. Well, both the hero and the heroine, the hero Michael, he comes from the ascendancy class, which is sort of the Protestant upper class that
Okay.
rose to the top after Ireland gained its independence. So there's no longer like landed gentry, but this is
Hmm.
like the elite, and they kind of operate like landlords, sort of.
Okay.
So that's how he's been raised. She is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and they both struggle to reconcile the tug they feel in their spirit to the way things should be in the world and between people with what they've seen in their own experiences. And so as I was kind of digging into their past to get to know them, to figure out how would they react in these
Yeah.
situations, it just kind of was a natural thing. They were both going, "What who am I?" Like,
Hmm.
okay, yes, I'm ascendancy class male and I'm supposed to take over my family's estate, or I'm this scullery maid with not a penny to my name. What does that mean? Like, who does that make me? And so they both are kind of wrestling with that. And even our villain characters are also going through the same things. We get to kind of see a glimpse into the past of the headmistress who
Okay.
makes Brianna's life miserable. And she too is searching for this identity, for this purpose.
Hmm.
And it shapes every choice she makes.
Okay.
And for her, she tries to find her identity in places that aren't strong enough to
Hmm.
provide that for her. And so then it ends up things go terribly wrong. And so I could also relate to that myself in my own walk with Christ, kind of trying to figure out, okay, where do I fit into this whole plan that you have for the
Hmm.
world and raising my kids? How do I help them see who they
Yeah.
are in Christ and who he's created them to be? And so a lot of that was going on in my mind while I was kind of in the planning stages of the story. So I
Yeah.
find a lot of times in these stories, the theme kind of finds me. I don't set out to go, okay, this is going to be my identity book. It just kind of
Right.
the characters show me what it needs
Sure.
to be. Yeah.
They kind of take you on your own journey. Yeah. Why do you
Yes.
think, thinking about our identity and our purpose, why do you think mankind struggles so much to find some sort of sense of belonging or purpose?
Mm. I think there's a few reasons. One, we were not created to do life alone. That
Mm,
was one of the first things God said when Adam was created was it is not good for man to be alone. And
yeah.
so we're created with this innate need to connect with God, with other people, and to kind of serve and be served in certain
Hmm.
ways. So I think that's one part. I think the other part is the things that we tend to believe will bring that identity to us and that sense of belonging. We chase those, and when we get them, they're not enough. So then
Mm,
we're going, well, if that's not who I am, or if that's not what I'm supposed to be, then it's got to be this next thing. And we just keep chasing after that rather than looking to the one who can fill that void and
hmm.
provide that context for who we are in no matter the circumstance. We tend to, I think
Right.
our sense of identity tends to change on how comfortable we are with our circumstances as well.
Right. Yeah. I've always kind of joked a little bit about it, but it's true that as humans, we can kind of be chameleons where
Mhm.
we change the color of our, you know, leopard skin or lizard skin. Wow, this is a really bad analogy. But where, a chameleon changes the color of their skin based
Mhm.
on where they're at. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we go through life and we constantly are shifting to fit in the circumstances or the people group around us, to a point where we're no longer sure even who we
Mhm.
are anymore.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna really pick your brain on this one. How, if someone's listening, how do they go about finding their identity in their creator versus the things around them?
You know, I'm still learning this lesson myself, but what I'm finding is the way to it is um sort of a little bit like Wonderland where up is down and down is up. For me, I have to stop thinking about myself and quit trying to find who am I, what am I, and look to him and see who is he, what is he, and look to him. And
Mhm.
as I'm watching him, then he like kind of works those things out. And suddenly I find I matter, I'm important, but I don't matter in the way that I thought that I did. And
Mm,
some of the things that I do, like, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. So spending that time getting to know him through his word, reading his word, spending time talking with him, listening with him, and then sharing with other people who are on that same faith journey. And what is God saying to you? How have you seen
yeah.
God? Because sometimes he reveals himself in a different way to them than I've seen, or I see how he's working in their life, and it
Mhm,
encourages me in mine. So again, it comes back to that community with God through his word and through prayer, and
mhm.
community with other believers as we walk kind of this weird road of faith together.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And I think it's, kind of looking at your book again, you mentioned, your heroine is a scullery maid and your heroes of the more elite. And I think even sometimes within the Christian faith, we can get caught up in the gradients
Mm,
of
mhm,
maturity of faith. And so like I'm a new Christian, so therefore, um, this person obviously has more faith than I do because they've,
mm,
been a Christian since they were born or whatever. It's almost like its own
mhm.
caste system in Christianity where when you really get us all robbed before Christ, there's no caste system. Trust me, we're
No,
all sinners and it's just the way it is.
yeah, exactly. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I think those that are a little more veteran in their faith can often learn more from a new believer because it's
Mhm.
they're seeing things through that lens for the first time, whereas we've kind
Right.
of grown accustomed. You know, I chose to start following Jesus when I was 5 and
Mhm.
then kind of recommitted to that later on in life. And so I've spent the majority of my life in this faith world. And so sometimes I think the stuff that is actually quite remarkable feels blasé to me because it's
Yeah.
what I've known for so long. And so
Yeah.
I think we have to be willing to kind of listen to everybody, even if it seems like, oh, well, they've
Right.
only, whatever. Like you're exactly
Right.
right. I think
Right.
that's very
Well,
true.
and when you think about the Maid of Ballymaccool and you think about the concept of like you refer to it sort of like a Cinderella concept a little bit.
Mm,
But you picture that Cinderella moment or that moment where you enter this kingdom and you're like, whoa, I mean, there's this awe and this impressiveness about it. And you translate that into the Christian faith and you translate into that finding your identity. And all of a sudden,
mm,
when you realize that you are actually not just associated or influenced by it, but you are a part of it,
yes,
it's extremely awe-inspiring at that point.
it is. There's actually a moment in the story when Brianna and Michael are talking, and he mentions something about his prayers, and she has that moment of like, "Oh my gosh, I never
Mm,
thought that other people are praying at the same time I am, and we could
mm,
be praying about the same thing," because
mm.
she spends so much of her time in isolation. She kind of
Okay.
forgets that the world exists. And so she realizes that at any given moment, she could be unified in prayer and conversation with
Wow.
her creator. And it was such a tender moment for her faith because she realized, I'm not as alone as I thought. And
Yeah.
so, um, I think the same thing it's the same is
Yeah.
true for us. We just have to let ourselves remember that.
Oh yeah. And then the identity that comes from that. And yes,
Exactly.
you're part of a bigger picture, you're part of the creator, and then you're part of this family
Mhm.
of believers worldwide, globally. It's yeah. Wow. Ooh, getting goosebumps over here at MadLit Musings. Let's take a quick break and we come back. I want to pick your brain a little bit more about some of the Irish historical elements that you put in the book.
Sounds good.
And we're back here at MadLit Musings with Jennifer Deibel, who writes Irish historical romance fiction from Revell Publishing, a subsidiary of a Baker Publishing Group. And this book is called The Maid of Ballymaccool. I was going to say The Bride of Ballymaccool, but she's not a bride. She's a scullery maid. So there's a
That's
difference.
correct. That's correct.
But what are some of the fun historical elements? We've talked a lot about the spiritual elements, which is great. But I know people who are interested in the book may want to know a little bit more about the history and what you threw
Mm.
in there from Ireland, because that's unique.
So, Ballymacool House is a real place. It actually exists. It was owned originally by the Boyd family, who was
Okay.
another family of the ascendancy class in the Letterkenny area of County Donegal. And originally, when I was planning this or started brainstorming this story, I was thinking of setting it at Kylemore Abbey, which is
Okay.
another pretty recognizable building. Even if people don't know the name, they'd recognize the picture if they saw it. But then on social media, came across this drone footage of this ruin of a building overgrown with ivy, and it was very haunting. And I was like, well, where is that? So I started looking, and it was Ballymacool. So I started researching this history, and I thought, okay, that's where it has to be. So I fibbed a little. It's never been a boarding school, but the building is still there. You can, if you go to Ballymacool Park, just outside of Letterkenny, you can go and see the ruins. And then the house really was, it was overrun by soldiers during the Irish War for Independence.
Okay.
And they ousted the Boyd family, kicked them out, ran them out of
Mm.
town, and they took over the house for a while, and they looted a bunch of things. And a lot of the
Mm.
valuables were recovered. But one specific thing that dated back to the Mary Queen of Scots,
Ooh.
she was related to the Boyd family through marriage over the centuries. And so this item had been passed down and was in the Boyd's possession. And it too was looted and it was never found.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I started thinking, what if somebody found it? Like, what would
Yeah.
happen? So that works its way into the story a little bit. Plus, it's the 1930s in Ireland, and it's really interesting because rural Ireland, especially, was several years, if not decades, behind kind of the technology. So,
Okay.
the first home didn't have a telephone until 1951 or something like that.
Wow.
Electricity did not make it out to the rural areas till the 40s. So at
Wow.
Ballymocool House, they're still using lanterns and they're still riding horses and things like that. So it's kind of a fun
Interesting.
juxtaposition. But then Michael's family has a motor car, but he doesn't like it. He likes his horse because it's, more
Yeah.
reliable or whatever. So it was kind of fun to play around with that kind of contrast as well that
Right.
that really really did exist at that time.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that was the case with the
Mm,
kind of behind the times thing, because I know, I mean, even in the US by the early 1900s, they, for the most part,
mhm.
had electricity in a lot of places and
Mhm.
phone usage and stuff.
Yeah,
Crazy.
so, like, Dublin, the wealthier families, the wealthier buildings, would have had those things first, of course, and then it took a very long time to make its way out because the rural areas, everything was so spread out.
I
There was
suppose.
no central way
Yeah.
to get any of that to anybody because you might be, half a mile from your closest neighbor and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sheep sheep grazing fields in
That's a
between.
sheep.
So like how do you do that? So yeah, it's interesting to learn about how they finally started getting some
Yeah.
of those modern amenities.
That's awesome. So it's not a stereotype. There are lots of sheep in
No,
Ireland.
absolutely. Yes.
I always see that in movies, like, I'm trying to think of the name. Leap Year was one of the movies, and there's
Oh
sheep in
yeah.
that one, and then there's sheep in this Irish movie, and I'm like, okay, is this accurate, or is this just some awful
Yes.
stereotype?
No, it really is. And where we lived in Donegal and near where this story is set, the farmers just the sheep are free range. They just go
Okay.
and the farmers spray, well, now they spray paint. I don't know what they did back in the day, but now
Yeah.
they spray paint their herd. So if they get mixed up, they can
Oh,
identify them or whatever.
sure.
So it's not uncommon for you to be delayed because there's a herd of sheep walking down the road or laying in the middle of the road and you have to wait for them to move or,
Oh, and sheep are a
you
little
know,
bit more stubborn than people realize. So,
Oh, for sure, for sure, and they can be mean too.
yeah,
Like,
they can.
if they get a bold streak in them, they
Hmm.
can do some damage.
Yeah, yeah. I worked on it called a mini farm because it was at a camp, but they had some sheep, and I was always like, sheep they're stupid for one thing. I
Mhm,
mean, they have like,
mhm.
it's like they have no common sense. Um and there was this one sheep I was trying to get her to move just so I could close the gate. That's all I needed. And I'm pushing on her. And of course they're big, they're not small.
Mhm.
And she just turns around and nails me with her head
Oh,
like a billy goat. And I'm like, what is
shoot.
this?
What's the matter with you?
Oh man.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they're very
anyway,
stubborn.
yeah, they definitely are kind of like people.
I was gonna say, yeah, and then
Yeah.
Jesus likened us to them, so
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we should
it's a little
be a little
uncomfortable.
careful how we, okay, I take it back. They're not stupid. They're extremely intelligent. Oh, fun. Well, is there anything
Um,
else about the Maid of Ballymaccool that we should know or that you wanted to share with us today?
I really just feel as I finished up the story and was praying through, like, who is the story for?
Mm,
Anybody who's ever felt unloved or unseen or overlooked or stuck in a impossible situation with
mhm,
no end in sight, like, this is the book for you because Brianna has a pretty horrible existence, and she could have let it ruin her faith and
mm,
make her bitter, but instead she allows her heart to remain soft. It's like, I think it actually is an Irish proverb that says the same boiling water that hardens the egg softens the potato, kind of a thing. I think
mm,
that's I think
okay.
that's what it says. So just if you've struggled with that, like, nobody
Mhm,
appreciates what I do, nobody sees how
mhm.
hard I'm working, this book is for you, and I pray that it would just be an encouragement to your soul and that
Yeah.
you would see in its pages how much you truly are loved.
Mm, absolutely. If readers want to find the book and find out more about you, where do they go?
So the one-stop shop to find all the things about me would be my website. It's just
Yes.
jenniferdeibel.com. And from there, you can learn about all of my books. You can sign up for my newsletter, and there's links to all of my social media. And all the books are available wherever you enjoy buying books.
Fabulous.
And this one is available in paperback, ebook, audiobook once it launches, and I think hardback as well.
Awesome. So is the audiobook going to have the Irish accent in it?
It is. I'm so excited. They
Yes.
actually got an Irish woman. She does Irish voiceover work
Uh,
overseas, and she's one she's one of the famous voices of a radio drama that's been
okay.
going for years. So
Sure.
I'm very excited. The
That's
other two
awesome.
have done a phenomenal job, but they've both been Americans that do great Irish accents, but I'm very excited to have
The
a
authentic.
a real Irish
Okay.
woman reading the
Irish woman.
story.
Yes, love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have not already ordered your copy of The Maid of Ballymaccool, it is available now, so you can order it and get that one shipped to you. And then check out Jennifer Deibel online and social media. And I can attest she's a pretty cool human being. So you're gonna want to get to know
Oh,
her.
thanks.
Thanks
Likewise.
for being thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's always so much fun.